The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Buckingham Palace as King Charles III stood before the ornate mirror in his private study. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie, the weight of the upcoming announcement pressing heavily on his shoulders. At 75, the king had faced many challenges throughout his reign, but today's decision would reshape the monarchy's future in ways that few could imagine. Queen Camilla entered the room quietly, her presence immediately bringing a sense of calm to the space. She had been his steadfast companion through decades of public scrutiny, personal trials, and the immense responsibility of the crown. Her silver hair was styled elegantly, and she wore a navy blue dress that had become her signature color during official engagements. Despite her composed exterior, Charles could see the concern flickering in her eyes. "Are you certain about this, Charles?" she asked softly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "The public reaction will be significant." The king turned to face his wife, taking her hands in his. "My dear, we've discussed this countless times. The monarchy must evolve, and your role in its future is not just important, it's essential. The people need to understand what lies ahead." For months, Charles had been contemplating this moment. The announcement he was about to make would officially confirm Queen Camilla's expanded duties and her crucial role in the continuity of the royal family. It wasn't just about protocol or tradition, it was about preparing the nation for a future that many weren't ready to contemplate. The palace had been buzzing with activity since dawn. Staff members moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for what would become one of the most significant royal announcements in recent history. Press secretaries fielded endless calls from international media outlets, while security teams coordinated with government officials to ensure the smooth delivery of the king's message. In the Queen's private sitting room, Camilla's longtime friend and confidant, Lady Sarah Henderson, sat nervously sipping tea. She had witnessed Camilla's transformation from a private citizen thrust into the public eye to a respected member of the royal family. The journey hadn't been easy, and Sarah knew that today's announcement would bring both vindication and renewed challenges. "She's stronger than people realize," Sarah murmured to herself, watching as groundskeepers tended to the palace gardens through the window. "If anyone can handle what's coming, it's Camilla." Meanwhile, in the palace's communications center, Private Secretary Sir Clive Alderton reviewed the final draft of the King's statement. Every word had been carefully chosen, every phrase analyzed for its potential impact on public opinion. The announcement wasn't just about confirming Queen Camilla's future role, it was about addressing the elephant in the room that had lingered since Charles's coronation. The king's health had been a subject of quiet speculation among royal watchers and government officials. While he maintained his public duties with characteristic dedication, those closest to him noticed subtle changes. He tired more easily during long engagements, and his doctor visits had become more frequent. Though nothing serious had been diagnosed, the reality of his age and the demanding nature of his role couldn't be ignored. This announcement would serve multiple purposes. It would formally acknowledge Queen Camilla's increasing responsibilities, prepare the public for potential future scenarios, and demonstrate the monarchy's commitment to stability and continuity. Most importantly, it would give Camilla the official recognition she deserved after years of dedicated service. As the morning progressed, members of the royal family began arriving at the palace. Prince William and Catherine had driven down from Windsor, their faces reflecting the gravity of the day's events. They understood that this announcement would have implications for their own future roles within the monarchy. The line of succession remained unchanged, but the dynamics of royal responsibility were about to shift significantly. In the palace kitchen, staff prepared refreshments for the family gathering that would follow the public announcement. Head cook Mrs. Margaret Thompson had worked at the palace for over 20 years and had witnessed many historic moments. She remembered the nervous energy that had filled the halls before previous major announcements, but today felt different. There was a sense of finality, of important decisions being made that would echo through generations. The king's longtime valet, James Morrison, helped Charles into his formal morning coat. Morrison had served the royal family for 3 decades and had developed an almost paternal fondness for the king. He noticed how Charles's shoulders seemed to carry an extra burden today, how his usual confident demeanor was tinged with uncertainty about public reception. "Your Majesty has made the right decision," Morrison said quietly as he brushed a piece of lint from the king's sleeve. "The Queen has proven herself time and again. The people will come to understand." Charles nodded gratefully. Public opinion about Camilla had certainly evolved over the years, but he knew that any announcement emphasizing her future role would rekindle old debates and controversies. Some would see it as necessary preparation for the monarchy's future, while others might interpret it as presumptuous or premature. In her private apartment, Queen Camilla was making her own final preparations. Her lady-in-waiting, Mrs. Jennifer Walsh, helped her select jewelry that would be appropriate for such a significant occasion. They chose a pearl necklace that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, a subtle but meaningful gesture that would not go unnoticed by royal observers. "Ma'am, if I may," Mrs. Walsh said carefully, "you've earned this recognition through your own merits. Your work with literacy programs, domestic violence charities, and your support of His Majesty has been exemplary." Camilla smiled warmly at her aide's words. She had indeed worked tirelessly to carve out her own meaningful role within the royal family. Her patronage of numerous charities had made real differences in people's lives, and her natural warmth during public engagements had gradually won over many who had initially been skeptical of her position. The Queen's mind wandered to her grandchildren and how this announcement might affect them. She thought about her role as a stepmother to William and Harry, and how that relationship had evolved over the years. While Harry's absence from today's gathering was notable, she understood his position and held no resentment. Family relationships within the monarchy were complex, influenced by duty, tradition, and personal feelings in equal measure. As noon approached, the final preparations were completed. The King's statement had been distributed to senior government officials, including the Prime Minister, who had been briefed on its contents the previous evening. The Archbishop of Canterbury had also been consulted, given the constitutional implications of any changes to royal responsibilities and succession planning. The palace's main reception room had been prepared for the family gathering that would follow the public announcement. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and the room had been arranged to accommodate both formal discussions and more intimate family conversations. This wasn't just a business meeting. It was a family coming together to support one another during a pivotal moment. Outside the palace gates, a small crowd of royal enthusiasts and journalists had begun to gather, sensing that something significant was about to be announced. The increased security presence and the flurry of official vehicles arriving throughout the morning had generated speculation about the nature of the King's statement. In his study, King Charles reviewed his notes one final time. The speech he was about to give would be broadcast live to the nation and the Commonwealth realms. Millions of people would hear his words, and their reactions would shape public discourse for months to come. He thought about his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and how she had navigated similar moments of constitutional significance throughout her long reign. The weight of history pressed upon him as he considered the precedent he was setting. Never before had a reigning monarch made such an explicit announcement about their consort's future role and responsibilities. But these were unprecedented times, and Charles believed that transparency and preparation were essential for the monarchy's continued relevance and stability. Queen Camilla joined him in the study, and together they walked toward the room where the announcement would be made. Their footsteps echoed softly in the corridors, each step bringing them closer to a moment that would define the next chapter of their reign and the monarchy's future. The king paused at the threshold, taking a deep breath before entering the room where cameras and microphones awaited. This wasn't just about confirming Camilla's role, it was about preparing a nation for changes that might come sooner than anyone expected. It was about ensuring continuity, stability, and the preservation of an institution that had guided Britain through centuries of triumph and challenge. As they entered the room together, the couple presented a united front, ready to face whatever reactions their announcement would generate. The future of the monarchy rested not just on tradition and protocol, but on their ability to adapt, evolve, and serve the people with dignity and purpose. Today's announcement would be the first step in that evolution, setting the stage for conversations and changes that would resonate for generations to come. The cameras rolled as King Charles III stepped behind the mahogany podium that had been specially positioned in the palace's blue drawing room. The ornate surroundings, with their golden gilt frames and crystal chandeliers, provided a backdrop that spoke of centuries of royal tradition. Yet the words he was about to speak would chart new territory for the British monarchy. "My fellow citizens of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms," the king began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Today, I stand before you to address matters of great importance regarding the future of our monarchy and the role that Her Majesty the Queen will play in the years ahead." The king's words were being transmitted live across television networks and streaming platforms worldwide. In living rooms across Britain, families gathered around their screens, sensing the historic nature of the announcement. Social media platforms immediately buzzed with speculation and commentary as the king's opening words reached global audiences. "Queen Camilla has, since our marriage and throughout my reign, demonstrated unwavering dedication to the people of our nation. Her commitment to charitable causes, her support of British institutions, and her genuine care for the welfare of our citizens has been exemplary. It is therefore my decision to formally expand her role and responsibilities within the monarchy." The weight of these words settled over the viewing audience like a gentle but significant shift in the constitutional landscape. Political commentators would later analyze every phrase, but, in the moment, the king's sincerity and careful delivery commanded attention and respect. Behind the cameras, Queen Camilla watched from a side room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had known this day would come, had prepared for it extensively, but experiencing the reality of the announcement still felt surreal. Her private secretary, Amanda Thompson, stood beside her, ready to provide support and guidance as the day's events unfolded. "Her Majesty has agreed to assume additional constitutional responsibilities," the king continued, "including expanded involvement in state ceremonies, increased representation at Commonwealth events, and a more prominent role in the daily governance of royal affairs." This enhancement of her duties reflects both her proven capabilities and the evolving needs of our monarchy in the 21st century. The announcement was carefully worded to avoid any suggestion of abdication or immediate succession planning, but astute observers recognized the implications. The king was essentially preparing the nation for a future where Queen Camilla would serve as a more active and visible partner in royal governance, potentially filling gaps that might arise due to his own health or other circumstances. In Parliament, members of both houses had been provided with advance copies of the king's statement. Prime Minister Margaret Whitfield watched the broadcast from her office in Downing Street, surrounded by constitutional lawyers and senior civil servants who had been briefed on the announcement's implications. The government's response would need to be carefully calibrated to support the monarchy while addressing any public concerns. The opposition leader, Thomas Reynolds, also watched with keen interest. Any changes to royal responsibilities would inevitably become a matter of political discussion, and he was already considering how his party should respond to questions about constitutional precedent and democratic accountability. The decision to expand Queen Camilla's role was not made lightly, the king emphasized in his statement. It reflects extensive consultation with constitutional experts, government officials, and senior members of the royal household. Most importantly, it serves the best interests of the people we are honored to serve. As the announcement continued, viewers began to understand that this wasn't merely ceremonial enhancement but a substantial shift in how the monarchy would function. The king outlined specific areas where Queen Camilla would take on increased responsibility, including oversight of certain royal charities, representation at international diplomatic events, and involvement in the annual state opening of Parliament. In the palace's communications center, press officers were already fielding calls from journalists seeking clarification and additional comment. The palace's official Twitter account posted excerpts from the king's statement, generating thousands of immediate responses ranging from supportive to skeptical to curious about the timing and motivations behind the announcement. The international reaction was equally swift and varied. Commonwealth leaders who had worked closely with Queen Camilla during state visits expressed support for the enhanced role, Other European monarchies, particularly those that had undergone similar constitutional adaptations, offered precedents and perspectives that would inform public discourse in the coming days. I want to address directly those who may question the timing or necessity of this announcement, the king said, anticipating criticism. The monarchy serves best when it operates with transparency and preparation. By clarifying Queen Camilla's expanded role now, we ensure continuity of service and avoid uncertainty that could arise from unforeseen circumstances. This portion of the statement was perhaps the most revealing, acknowledging without explicitly stating the various scenarios that might necessitate such preparation. The king's age, the demanding nature of royal duties, and the need for institutional stability all contributed to the decision's urgency. In her private sitting room, the Queen Mother's former lady-in-waiting, Lady Patricia Morrison, watched the broadcast with particular interest. She had witnessed similar moments of constitutional significance during her decades of royal service and recognized the careful balance required between tradition and adaptation. The monarchy's survival had always depended on its ability to evolve while maintaining its essential character. The Queen and I are committed to serving you with dignity, dedication, and humility, the king concluded his formal statement. We ask for your continued support as we work together to ensure that the monarchy remains a source of stability, unity, and service for generations to come. As the camera stopped rolling, the king felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The words had been spoken, the decision made public, and now the real work of implementation and public engagement would begin. He knew that reactions would be mixed, that debates would rage in newspapers and on television panels, and that his decision would be analyzed and criticized from every conceivable angle. Queen Camilla joined him immediately after the broadcast, and together they faced their first test of the new arrangement. A small group of senior palace officials, including the Lord Chamberlain and the Queen's private secretary, awaited their guidance on next steps and media strategy. The statement was perfect, Your Majesty, said Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary. Clear, dignified, and appropriately detailed without being overly specific about sensitive matters. The Queen nodded gratefully but remained focused on the practical implications of the announcement. We need to be prepared for questions about specific duties, timing, and constitutional precedent, she said. The public will want details about how this affects daily operations and what it means for the future. Outside the palace, the small crowd of royal watchers had grown considerably as news of the announcement spread through social media and news alerts. Some held signs expressing support for the Queen, while others displayed more skeptical messages about royal privilege and relevance. The police maintained order, but the diverse reactions reflected the broader public sentiment that the palace would need to navigate carefully. Television news programs immediately shifted to analysis mode, with constitutional experts, royal biographers, and political commentators offering their interpretations of the king's statement. The consensus among experts was that the announcement represented a significant but logical evolution of royal responsibilities, though questions remained about implementation and public acceptance. Dr. Sarah Wellington, a constitutional law professor at Oxford University, appeared on BBC News to provide expert analysis. What we've witnessed today is unprecedented in its explicitness, she explained to viewers. While consorts have always played important roles, never before has a reigning monarch made such a formal, public statement about expanding those responsibilities. The announcement's timing, just as Parliament was considering various constitutional reforms, added another layer of complexity to the political landscape. Some saw it as the monarchy proactively adapting to changing expectations, while others questioned whether such significant changes should be subject to broader democratic consultation. In Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, regional leaders were already being asked for their responses to the King's announcement. The devolved nature of the United Kingdom meant that royal responsibilities and representation varied across different regions, and Queen Camilla's expanded role would need to accommodate these complexities. The Commonwealth realms, where King Charles served as head of state, would also need to consider the implications of Queen Camilla's enhanced role. Some realms had their own protocols regarding royal visits and representation, and the announcement would likely prompt discussions about how these arrangements might evolve. As evening approached, the palace prepared for the next phase of the day's events, a private family gathering where the immediate implications of the announcement would be discussed in detail. Prince William and Catherine had arrived earlier, and their presence signaled the importance of ensuring smooth coordination between current and future royal responsibilities. The king's announcement had set in motion a series of conversations, evaluations, and adaptations that would reshape the monarchy's operations for years to come. While the immediate public reaction was still developing, the palace knew that true assessment of the decision's impact would unfold over months and years as Queen Camilla assumed her expanded duties and demonstrated her capabilities in these new roles. The hours following the king's historic announcement unfolded like ripples across a pond, each wave of reaction generating new conversations, analyses, and emotions throughout the United Kingdom and beyond. In the palace's private family quarters, an unprecedented gathering was taking place as senior royals convened to discuss the practical implications of Queen Camilla's expanded role. Prince William arrived with Catherine, their faces reflecting both support and concern for the delicate balance this change would require. As heir to the throne, William understood better than most the complex web of constitutional, personal, and public considerations that had led to his father's decision. The couple had spent the drive from Windsor discussing their own future responsibilities and how they might need to adapt their current roles to support the new arrangement. "Father, we stand behind your decision completely," William said as he embraced the king in the blue drawing room where the family had assembled. "Catherine and I have discussed how we can best support Queen Camilla in her expanded duties while maintaining our own commitments." Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach to royal duties, had driven down from Gloucestershire that morning. As someone who had witnessed decades of constitutional evolution within the monarchy, she brought a pragmatic perspective to the family discussions. Her experience managing extensive royal responsibilities made her an invaluable advisor on the practical aspects of implementing such significant changes. "The key will be ensuring clear delineation of responsibilities," Anne observed, settling into her favorite armchair near the fireplace. "The public needs to understand how these changes enhance rather than complicate the monarchy's effectiveness." The Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, and his wife Sophie had also made the journey to London. Edward's experience with the Duke of Edinburgh's award and his various charitable endeavors provided insights into how Queen Camilla's expanded role might affect existing royal patronages and commitments. Sophie, who had successfully navigated her own evolution from a private citizen to a senior working royal, offered particular empathy for Queen Camilla's position. She understood the scrutiny and expectations that came with increased responsibilities, having experienced similar challenges during her own transition into royal life. Meanwhile, in newsrooms across the country, editorial teams were working frantically to analyze and report on the announcement's implications. The BBC's royal correspondent, James Mitchell, had been covering the monarchy for over 15 years and recognized the historic nature of the king's statement. "This announcement represents the most significant clarification of royal responsibilities since the abdication crisis of 1936, Mitchell explained to his television audience during the evening news. "While the circumstances are entirely different, the constitutional implications are similarly profound." In Parliament, constitutional scholars were already being consulted about precedent and procedure. Dr. Margaret Foster, who had advised previous governments on royal matters, was fielding calls from journalists and politicians seeking to understand the legal and practical ramifications of the king's decision. "The monarchy has always operated with a degree of flexibility regarding responsibilities and duties," Dr. Foster explained during a radio interview. "What's unprecedented is the public, formal nature of this announcement. It suggests preparation for various scenarios while maintaining constitutional propriety." The opposition parties found themselves in a delicate position. While criticism of the monarchy could generate political support among Republican-minded voters, attacking a decision that appeared to strengthen institutional stability risked appearing destructive rather than constructive. Thomas Reynolds, the opposition leader, crafted a carefully worded statement that acknowledged the king's prerogative while questioning the timing and process of the announcement. While we respect His Majesty's constitutional role, Reynolds stated, we believe such significant changes warrant broader consultation with elected representatives and the people they serve. In the palace, Queen Camilla was meeting with her expanded team of private secretaries and advisors. The announcement meant that her existing staff would need to be significantly enlarged to handle increased responsibilities. Amanda Thompson, her senior private secretary, was coordinating with the palace's Human Resources Department to identify and recruit additional support staff. Ma'am, we'll need to establish clear protocols for your new ceremonial duties, Thompson explained, reviewing a thick folder of constitutional precedents and procedures. Your involvement in state openings of Parliament, for instance, will require coordination with the Lord Chamberlain's office and parliamentary officials. The Queen listened carefully, occasionally asking questions about timing, precedent, and public expectations. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying constitutional law, reviewing historical precedents, and consulting with experts about the practical aspects of expanded royal responsibilities. Her charity work, which had been a passion throughout her time as Queen Consort, would now need to be balanced with increased state duties. The literacy programs she championed, her work with domestic violence survivors, and her support for military families would all need to continue within the framework of her expanded role. I want to ensure that my increased duties enhance rather than diminish my charitable work, she told her team. The people who depend on these programs matter just as much as constitutional ceremonies. Outside the palace, public reaction continued to develop throughout the day. Opinion polls commissioned by major newspapers showed a complex picture of public sentiment. While many respondents expressed support for Queen Camilla personally, questions remained about the timing and necessity of the announcement. Margaret Thompson, a retired teacher from Manchester, represented one segment of public opinion. Queen Camilla has proven herself through her charity work and support for the king, she told a television news crew conducting street interviews. If this helps the monarchy serve us better, I support it completely. However, other voices expressed skepticism about the expansion of royal responsibilities during a time of economic uncertainty and social challenges. David Wilson, a construction worker from Liverpool, questioned whether the monarchy needed more complex structures when many citizens were struggling with basic needs. I don't understand why we need more royal duties when people are having trouble paying their bills, Wilson said during the same news segment. Maybe they should focus on the duties they already have. The international reaction was equally varied and significant. European monarchies, particularly those in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, offered supportive statements recognizing the challenges of constitutional adaptation. King Carl XVI Gustav of Sweden, who had implemented similar changes during his own reign, sent a private message of support to King Charles. Commonwealth leaders were more cautious in their responses, recognizing that changes to royal responsibilities could affect their own relationships with the British Crown. Canadian Prime Minister Jennifer Adams issued a diplomatic statement expressing confidence in the monarchy's continued service while noting that any changes would be discussed through appropriate channels. In Australia, where Republican sentiment had grown in recent years, the announcement generated renewed debate about the country's constitutional future. Opposition leader Michael Chin used the announcement to reiterate calls for an Australian republic, arguing that changes to royal responsibilities highlighted the anachronistic nature of the current system. As evening fell, the family gathering at the palace continued with detailed discussions about implementation timelines and coordination between various royal offices. The king's announcement had been just the beginning of a complex process that would reshape how the monarchy operated on a daily basis. Prince William and Catherine discussed with the king and Queen how their own international tour schedule might need to be adjusted to accommodate Queen Camilla's expanded role in diplomatic representation. The careful balance of royal presence at various events would require unprecedented coordination between all senior working royals. We need to ensure that the public sees this as strengthening rather than complicating the monarchy, Catherine observed during the family discussion. The changes should feel natural and beneficial, not bureaucratic or self-serving. The king nodded approvingly at his daughter-in-law's insight. Public perception would indeed be crucial to the success of these changes, and every decision about implementation would need to consider how it would be received by citizens who funded and supported the monarchy. As the day drew to a close, television news programs began their evening analysis with panels of experts, former royal staff members, and political commentators. The consensus was emerging that while the announcement was unprecedented in its formality, it represented a logical evolution of royal responsibilities that could strengthen the monarchy's effectiveness and stability. Dr. James Patterson, author of several books on constitutional monarchy, appeared on multiple news programs throughout the evening. "What we're seeing," he explained, "is a monarchy that's learning from history and preparing for the future. Rather than waiting for crisis or circumstance to force change, King Charles is proactively ensuring continuity and stability." The announcement had succeeded in generating exactly the kind of thoughtful, serious discussion that the palace had hoped for. While reactions varied, the overall tone of public discourse was respectful and constructive, focusing on practical implications rather than personal attacks or constitutional chaos. Queen Camilla retired to her private apartments that evening knowing that her life had changed fundamentally. The announcement marked not just an expansion of duties but a formal recognition of her place in the monarchy's future. The years of gradual acceptance and proven service had culminated in this moment of official acknowledgement and enhanced responsibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the practical work of implementing these changes began in earnest. But, tonight, she could reflect on a day that had gone better than anyone had dared hope, setting the stage for a new chapter in the British monarchy's evolution. 3 weeks after the historic announcement, the practical implications of Queen Camilla's expanded role began to manifest in ways both subtle and profound throughout the royal establishment. The initial media storm had settled into a more measured analysis of what the changes would mean for British society, the Commonwealth, and the monarchy's daily operations. In the Queen's newly expanded private office, a team of constitutional experts worked alongside seasoned royal staff to develop protocols and procedures that had never existed before. Amanda Thompson, now holding the elevated title of Queen's Principal Private Secretary, coordinated with the Lord Chamberlain's office to establish precedents for Queen Camilla's enhanced ceremonial duties. "Your Majesty, we need to address the matter of your role in the state opening of Parliament," Thompson explained during his daily meetings with government officials. He found himself increasingly discussing how various decisions and policies might affect Queen Camilla's expanded responsibilities. The interconnected nature of royal duties meant that every significant decision now required additional layers of coordination and consideration. Prime Minister Margaret Whitfield had requested a private audience with the King to discuss the practical implications of the announced changes for government relations with the monarchy. The meeting, held in the King's private study, addressed concerns that had been raised by various ministers about protocol and precedent. "Your Majesty, we fully support the announced changes," Whitfield assured the King. "However, we need clarity about how Queen Camilla's expanded role will interface with existing governmental procedures, particularly regarding state visits and diplomatic protocols." The King appreciated the Prime Minister's direct approach to these legitimate concerns. The relationship between the monarchy and government required careful calibration under normal circumstances, and the recent changes added new complexity that needed thoughtful management. "Prime Minister, I assure you that all changes will be implemented in full consultation with your government," Charles replied. Queen Camilla's expanded duties are designed to strengthen, not complicate, the monarchy's service to the nation. In Parliament, MPs from both sides of the aisle were grappling with questions from constituents about the announcement's implications. Many reported that their constituency meetings had included discussions about royal responsibilities, constitutional precedent, and the appropriate role of monarchy in modern democracy. Sarah Mitchell, Labour MP for North London East, found herself defending the monarchy's evolution during a heated town hall meeting in her constituency. "The royal family has always adapted to changing circumstances," she explained to a packed community centre. "What we're seeing now is transparency about that adaptation, which I believe serves the public interest." However, her constituent responses revealed the complex public sentiment surrounding the changes. While many expressed support for Queen Camilla personally and appreciation for the monarchy's service, others questioned whether such significant constitutional changes should be subject to broader democratic consultation. "Why should we accept major changes to our constitutional arrangements without having a say?" asked Robert Chen, a local business owner. "If the monarchy is changing how it operates, shouldn't Parliament or even the public have some input into those decisions?" These questions were being echoed in similar meetings across the country, creating a new political dynamic that all parties were working to navigate. The monarchy's changes were generating conversations about constitutional reform, democratic accountability, and the role of tradition in modern governance. Queen Camilla's first major public engagement under her expanded role came during a state visit from the President of Ireland. The carefully choreographed event served as a practical test of the new arrangements and provided the first public glimpse of how the changes would function in practice. The Queen's enhanced role in the welcome ceremony was subtle but significant. She stood in a position of greater prominence during the formal greetings, participated more actively in the ceremonial proceedings, and played a more substantial role in the state banquet that evening. President Mary Sullivan of Ireland, who had met Queen Camilla several times during previous diplomatic encounters, noticed the enhanced formality and significance of the Queen's participation. During a private moment between ceremonies, she complimented the Queen on the grace with which she was handling her expanded responsibilities. "Your Majesty, if I may say so, these changes feel entirely natural," President Sullivan observed. "Your increased role enhances rather than complicates the diplomatic proceedings." The Queen was pleased by this feedback, recognizing that international acceptance of her expanded role would be crucial for its success. Diplomatic relationships often depended on personal connections and respect, and positive reactions from foreign leaders would validate the monarchy's approach to these changes. The state visit concluded successfully, with media coverage focusing more on the diplomatic achievements than on the constitutional implications of Queen Camilla's enhanced participation. This represented exactly the kind of seamless integration of new responsibilities that the palace had hoped to achieve. However, not all public reactions were as positive as the diplomatic response. A small but vocal Republican movement had seized upon the announcement as evidence of the monarchy's anachronistic nature and self-serving tendencies. Protests outside the palace, while peaceful and small in scale, attracted media attention and provided a platform for alternative viewpoints. Graham Davies, spokesperson for the British Republican movement, used the expanded royal responsibilities as ammunition for his organization's campaigns. "This announcement demonstrates exactly why the monarchy is outdated," he declared during a press conference. "Unelected individuals are expanding their own power and influence without any democratic oversight or accountability." These criticisms, while representing a minority viewpoint, forced the palace to consider how to address Republican sentiment while implementing the announced changes. The communications team developed talking points that emphasized service, tradition, and constitutional stability while acknowledging legitimate concerns about democratic accountability. In Scotland, the announcement had generated particular interest due to ongoing discussions about Scottish independence and constitutional reform. First Minister James MacLeod had issued a carefully neutral statement supporting the monarchy service while noting Scotland's own evolving constitutional arrangements. The Scottish Parliament had scheduled a debate on the implications of royal changes for Scotland's relationship with the monarchy, highlighting the complex interplay between national, regional, and constitutional politics that surrounded any significant royal announcement. Queen Camilla's expanded role would include increased representation at Scottish ceremonies and events, requiring coordination with the Scottish government and recognition of Scotland's distinct cultural and political traditions. Her first official visit to Scotland under the new arrangements was being planned for the following month. Wales presented similar opportunities and challenges, with the Welsh Assembly expressing interest in how Queen Camilla's expanded role might affect royal representation in Wales. The country's strong cultural identity and distinct political traditions required sensitive handling of any changes to royal responsibilities and representation. Prince William, as heir to the throne, was simultaneously supporting the current changes while considering their implications for his own future reign. His weekly meetings with his father increasingly focused on constitutional continuity and the long-term health of the monarchy as an institution. The key is ensuring that these changes serve the public good rather than institutional convenience, William observed during one of their private discussions. Public support for the monarchy depends on our demonstrated commitment to service above self-interest. King Charles valued his son's perspective, recognizing that William's eventual reign would be shaped by the precedents being established during this period of constitutional adaptation. The changes to Queen Camilla's role would influence how future consorts might serve and how the monarchy would continue to evolve. Catherine, meanwhile, was adjusting her own schedule and responsibilities to coordinate with Queen Camilla's expanded duties. The two women had developed a strong working relationship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to royal service, and their collaboration would be essential for the smooth implementation of the new arrangements. "The public needs to see us working together seamlessly," Catherine noted during a planning meeting for upcoming engagements. Any appearance of competition or conflict would undermine the entire enterprise. As the first month of the new arrangements concluded, palace officials began conducting a comprehensive review of their implementation. Public opinion polling showed gradual acceptance of the changes, with support increasing as people observed their practical application during real events and ceremonies. The Queen's expanded role was beginning to feel natural rather than imposed, suggesting that the careful planning and gradual implementation strategy had been successful. However, everyone involved recognized that long-term success would require continued attention to public opinion, constitutional propriety, and effective service to the nation. Looking ahead, the palace was already planning for Queen Camilla's first solo state visit under her expanded role, her increased participation in the upcoming state opening of Parliament, and her enhanced involvement in various charitable and ceremonial activities throughout the year. The announcement that had seemed so momentous just weeks earlier was already becoming integrated into the monarchy's regular operations, demonstrating both the institution's adaptability and the careful preparation that had preceded the public announcement. 6 months had passed since the King's historic announcement, and the autumn leaves falling around Buckingham Palace seemed to mirror the settling of public opinion around Queen Camilla's expanded role. What had initially generated intense debate and speculation had gradually become accepted as a natural evolution of royal responsibilities, validated by the Queen's graceful execution of her enhanced duties. The state opening of Parliament in November provided the most visible demonstration of the changes implemented since the spring announcement. Queen Camilla's prominent position during the ceremony, her active participation in the processional, and her enhanced role in the diplomatic reception that followed showcased how seamlessly the new arrangements had been integrated into centuries-old traditions. Foreign diplomats attending the ceremony remarked privately about the dignity and effectiveness with which Queen Camilla carried out her expanded responsibilities. Ambassador Patricia Williams from Canada noted in her dispatch to Ottawa that the changes appeared to have strengthened rather than complicated the monarchy's ceremonial functions. "The Queen's enhanced role provides additional gravitas and diplomatic capacity," Williams wrote. "Her natural warmth and evident preparation for these responsibilities have impressed international observers and appear to have broad public acceptance." The success of the state opening had particular significance because it represented the most constitutionally sensitive aspect of Queen Camilla's expanded role. Her increased participation in the ceremony that formally opens each parliamentary session demonstrated the monarchy's continued relevance and effectiveness in Britain's democratic system. King Charles observed the proceedings with evident satisfaction, recognizing that the smooth implementation of these changes validated his decision to make the announcement when he did. His own health remained stable, but the preparation and planning that had preceded the announcement ensured that the monarchy was ready for various future scenarios. In her private study that evening, Queen Camilla reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this moment. Her correspondence secretary, Mrs. Jennifer Walsh, was helping her review the hundreds of letters that had arrived following the state opening ceremony, most expressing admiration for her performance of her new duties. "Ma'am, the response has been overwhelmingly positive," Walsh reported. "Citizens from across the Commonwealth have written to express their support for your expanded role and their appreciation for your service. Among the letters was a particularly touching note from Mrs. Dorothy Henderson, an elderly woman from Yorkshire who had initially been skeptical of Queen Camilla but had been won over by her dedication to charitable work and constitutional duty. Your Majesty, the letter read, I must admit I had reservations when you first joined the royal family. But, watching you grow into your role and seeing how gracefully you've accepted these new responsibilities has changed my mind completely. You serve our country with dignity and genuine care. Such personal testimony represented the broader shift in public opinion that had occurred since the announcement. Polling data showed that support for Queen Camilla had increased significantly over the 6 months, with particular approval for her handling of the expanded responsibilities. The success of Queen Camilla's enhanced role had also positive implications for the broader royal family. Prince William and Catherine found that their own duties were now better coordinated with the senior royals, creating a more effective distribution of royal responsibilities across different generations and areas of expertise. The changes have actually made our work more focused and effective, Catherine observed during a family dinner at Windsor Castle. When everyone's role is clearly defined and properly supported, we can all serve the public more effectively. Princess, and ever pragmatic in her approach to royal duties, had become one of Queen Camilla's strongest supporters within the family. Her own extensive experience with royal responsibilities gave her particular appreciation for the complexity and dedication required to fulfill expanded duties effectively. Camilla has proven that these changes were not just constitutional necessity but genuine enhancement of royal service, and told her private secretary. The public can see the difference in terms of coverage, representation, and effectiveness. The international dimension of Queen Camilla's expanded role had also proven successful beyond initial expectations. Her first solo state visit, to Denmark in September, had been a diplomatic triumph that strengthened bilateral relations and demonstrated her capability to represent Britain's interests independently. Queen Margrethe II of Denmark had hosted Queen Camilla with warmth and respect that reflected the successful establishment of her enhanced international role. The visit had included substantive discussions about climate change, cultural exchange, and economic cooperation, showing that Queen Camilla's expanded duties encompassed genuine diplomatic substance rather than mere ceremonial enhancement. Her Majesty's visit has deepened our bilateral relationship in meaningful ways, commented Danish Foreign Minister Lars Petersen. She brought both personal warmth and serious engagement with policy issues that matter to both our nations. The success of this international representation had led to invitations for additional solo visits from several Commonwealth and European nations, indicating broad international acceptance of Queen Camilla's enhanced role. Back in Britain, the practical implementation of the changes had required extensive coordination between various royal offices, government departments, and constitutional experts. Lord Chamberlain Sir Andrew Parker had overseen much of this coordination, ensuring that traditional protocols were respected while accommodating the new arrangements. The key has been ensuring that change enhances rather than disrupts our established systems, Parker explained during a briefing with senior palace officials. Queen Camilla's expanded role has been integrated so smoothly that it now feels like a natural part of our operations. The financial implications of the expanded role had also been carefully managed. Rather than increasing overall royal expenditure, the changes had involved reallocating existing resources more effectively and eliminating some duplicated functions. The Treasury had expressed satisfaction with the cost-neutral implementation of the expanded responsibilities. As Christmas approached, the royal family gathered for their traditional holiday celebrations at Sandringham. The relaxed family atmosphere provided an opportunity for informal reflection on the year's significant changes and their implications for the future. King Charles used his Christmas broadcast to acknowledge the year of transition and change, expressing gratitude for public support of the monarchy's evolution. This year has reminded us that our institutions remain strong when they adapt thoughtfully to changing circumstances while preserving their essential character and purpose. Queen Camilla's presence during the Christmas broadcast was notably more prominent than in previous years, reflecting her enhanced status and responsibilities. Her natural warmth and evident comfort with her role contributed to the broadcast's positive reception and reinforced public acceptance of the changes. The success of the announcement and its implementation had broader implications for the monarchy's future. It demonstrated that significant constitutional changes could be managed effectively when they were carefully planned, transparently communicated, and implemented with sensitivity to public opinion and constitutional tradition. Constitutional experts began citing the process as a model for how democratic monarchies could adapt to changing circumstances without losing public support or constitutional legitimacy. Dr. Margaret Foster, who had provided advice during the planning stages, published an academic paper analyzing the successful implementation as a case study in constitutional evolution. The King's announcement and Queen Camilla's subsequent performance have shown that monarchy can evolve proactively rather than reactively, Foster wrote. This approach strengthens rather than weakens the institution's democratic legitimacy and public support. Looking toward the future, the palace began planning for additional evolutionary steps that might be necessary as circumstances continued to change. The successful implementation of Queen Camilla's expanded role had created a template for managing constitutional adaptation that could be applied to future challenges and opportunities. Prince William's eventual accession to the throne would benefit from the precedents and procedures that had been established during this period of change. The monarchy had proven its ability to evolve thoughtfully and effectively, ensuring its continued relevance and service to the nation. As the year drew to a close, Queen Camilla could look back on the historic announcement with satisfaction and forward to the future with confidence. The expanded role that had seemed so daunting when first proposed had become a natural and fulfilling part of her service to the crown and country. The success of the changes had validated King Charles's decision to address the monarchy's future proactively rather than waiting for circumstances to force adaptation. By planning ahead and implementing change transparently, the royal family had strengthened their position and enhanced their service to the nation. The announcement that had seemed so momentous had ultimately become part of the monarchy's ongoing evolution, demonstrating both the institution's adaptability and its enduring commitment to serving the British people with dignity, effectiveness, and genuine care for the public good. As snow began to fall on the Sandringham estate, covering the grounds in pristine white, it seemed to symbolize the fresh start that the year's changes had brought to the British monarchy. The institution that had guided the nation through centuries of change had once again proven its ability to evolve while maintaining its essential character and purpose.